Jeff's fly life truly began when he met a moth named Moth the night after he died, though time passed differently dead, so the hour isn't certain. The world moved slower. Days and nights blended into one long dusk and dawn. Seconds and minutes waltzed along at a nearly rhythmic pace. At some point, Jeff gave up trying to figure out how to pass through the ceiling and began looking for another way out of his apartment. His dead body, sprawled out on the floor below, smelled stiff and cold. His ratty brown recliner sat empty in the corner of the room. The silver tape that zigzagged its back and crisscrossed the seat cushion had frayed and torn in several places, allowing yellow foam stuffing to poke through. The ratty recliner, a couple of end tables and lamps from the thrift store, and a TV were the only real pieces of furniture in the room. Jeff remembered the landlord telling him the place looked pitiful. Jeff remembered because it gave him the perfect opportunity to tell his joke. But just like the guy with a ponytail from across the street, the apartment manager didn't get it either, even when he explained it to her. With the television off, the lamp gave off the lone light in the room. Although he knew it wasn't the light, it drew him. As he focused on the bulb, Jeff caught a glimpse of movement inside the shade. Something was flying around the bulb. Sporadic bursts of bright, then dark, flitted back and forth and cast shadows on the ceiling and walls. He froze. Sensing movement through his new eyes made him queasy. Jeff reached and caught the ceiling again, still under the impression he was simply a spirit having difficulty navigating his new lot in life. Jeff's head swam and his stomach churned. He tried to close his eyes but couldn't. He thought it odd but let it pass for the moment. He clung tighter to his perch and focused his gaze on a plump spider sitting near the corner of the ceiling. It didn't move, unlike the moth who continued to fly frantically around the inside of the lampshade. The spider's stillness calmed Jeff, and his dizziness and nausea passed. He watched the spider closely as it perched above the ratty recliner. "What are you looking at?" Jeff jumped and bumped his still throbbing head on the ceiling again. The slight voice came from behind. "Over here," it said. Jeff swung to the sound. The moth from below had abandoned the lampshade and now hung beside him. "Name's Moth. I was wondering when you'd come around." Moth pushed away from the ceiling, then fluttered awkwardly back into place. "You didn't move all night." Moth dove back into the light, spiraled 2 laps around the inside, sailed back to the ceiling and continued. "Spider watched you all day, but she left you alone." Moth sprang from the ceiling and circled to Jeff's opposite side. "Stay away from Spider." Jeff wanted to speak, wanted to scream, but couldn't figure out how to make words with his tiny mouth. "Cockroach crept out last night and sniffed your ass. I told him to leave you alone. You probably weren't dead, just tired." Then he reminded me of all his kids. He said they hadn't eaten in hours, but I told him it wouldn't be right to feed you to them if you were still alive. Moth paused, but only for a breath. "Snuck right up behind you. You didn't flinch." He turned slightly and poked Jeff with an antenna. "You got to say something. If you are dead, I might as well let Cockroach haul you off and have at you next time." "I'm not dead!" The words formed in Jeff's little brain and somehow found their way out. "I'm not dead," he stammered. Moth sprang from his upside-down perch and sprinted 3 more laps around the light. This time, however, he emerged and landed on the edge of the shade. "Good. Not dead is good." Moth rose and fluttered around the corpse and landed on dead Jeff's cold nose. "Of course, it's all a matter of perspective, am I right?" He looked back and forth between dead Jeff and not dead Jeff, as if to emphasize his point, then slowly lifted off the cold body. "How can you see me?" Jeff hovered down to Moth's level. "I'm a ghost. I died. You aren't invisible, if that's what you mean, and you certainly are no ghost." "I see you and hear you, big guy." "Then what am I?" Jeff asked. "What kind of question is that? Come check it out yourself." Moth fluttered toward a lonely mirror which hung on the back wall. Hesitant at first, Jeff followed. The flight carried him away from his dead body and away from Spider. Moments later, he stopped in front of the mirror where Moth was waiting. Jeff momentarily focused his gaze on Moth, not sure he wanted to see what death looked like if he could see it at all. After what seemed like hours, but time passed differently, so the second wasn't certain, Jeff quit caring and looked up. When he did, he saw a fly. "You're a fly." "Little legs, big eyes, wings," Moth nodded as he spoke. Jeff rose, and the fly in the front of him rose. He hovered in place, and the fly in front of him hovered in place. The fly in front of him mirrored every move Jeff made. Jeff didn't like the look of death and buzzed a straight line to the front door. He soared back over his corpse and past the recliner. He wanted out. He wanted out of his apartment. He wanted out of his tiny new body. He wanted out of the whole strange situation. So he flew, and he flew hard. He flew straight into the door.